Hey, how's it going? I'm Ron,
I'm Zach.
and we're here on the final episode of Influences.
Somewhat. More than likely the final episode that will be uploaded consistently, although this one's a bit late. Um, we've decided that we would like to move towards something a little easier uh, and that allows us to cover more things across a wider range of topics. Um, Maybe this will be podcasts, maybe this will be separate types of videos. That is yet to be seen. However, influences. Um, we believe after about 50 episodes we've covered most of the things that we enjoy in about as much detail as we can fit into a video. So, starting off with where it all began, we have Queens of the Stone Age. This episode was the first one we did, so we didn't really approach it the same way. But, you know, we have plenty of great things to say, and that probably won't be the last time we ever talk about them. Queens of the Stone Age is a fairly new band compared to a lot of the stuff that we listen to, and Josh Homme, the frontman, is an amazing songwriter, and all of their albums are phenomenal up to a certain point. But all their songs off the albums, there are some ones that you can't miss, like Into the Hollow, Someone's in the Wolf, I Appear Missing, Better Living Through Chemistry.
The blood is love.
That as well, and plenty more we could go on.
Etc., etc.
Next is Tool.
Tool.
Tool is a quintessential band of the 2000s. I mean, their new album was going to come out like 3 years ago, but don't worry, we forgive them.
It's like Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, King Crimson, and Pink Floyd created a baby together.
It's a mixture of higher consciousness and primal energy, and it's absolutely phenomenal. I have to say their 3 main albums, you know, Anima, AE, Nema,
the Justin Chancellor
yes.
years. Once Justin Chancellor came into the band, they kind of became a different band. They went from metal grunge band. A lot of people argue with this. A lot of people like the earlier stuff. And
it's all great, really.
It
but
got
Justin
me into
Chancellor,
them, so I
yeah.
can't fault it. But once Anima came out, they just went from here to here, and it just was a whole new game. And their new album is our most eagerly anticipated listening experience.
It's fair to say. If you haven't heard anything by Tool, that's kind of up on your list, I would hope, to get around to doing. Next is Soundgarden. We covered this, I believe, shortly before the sad passing of Chris
Cornell. It was like
Cornell.
a week before Chris Cornell passed away, and unfortunately Zach had school, so I went to the concert and I said, hey, they're making a new album, and when they come back around we'll go see them. And that's a big regret, but you never imagined that that was going to happen.
Chris Cornell is an amazing songwriter, an amazing musician. I think the best rock and roll vocalist since Robert Plant.
Indeed.
Yeah, by a landslide. And since that episode, we had gone back and listened to every album, every song by them, and it really kind of opened our eyes to them again. Gave us a whole nother appreciation. So I gotta say, check out the album Bad Motorfinger. Anything off of that is great. Down on the Upside and Super Unknown, of course, are also great albums. You really can't go wrong with Soundgarden. Next is Pink Floyd, which is kind of the other half of our image there.
Yeah.
So we got lots of great stuff to say about Pink Floyd as well.
Yeah, once Pink Floyd got into the they were early on with Syd Barrett, and that's how they broke through originally in the late 60s. Then Syd Barrett took too much acid, went crazy, and the band was left to try and find a new identity with David Gilmour coming in, taking Syd Barrett's place as vocalist and guitar player. And they floundered around for a few years until probably 1971 or 1972, when they put out the Metal album, and they started getting a style together. And then bam,
After that, it was all uphill.
Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and Wall. I mean, just
Those
like,
4 albums, even metal, but Dark Side of the Moon, To the Wall, anything in that period is must see. It's Pink Floyd. It's very quintessential.
Yeah, I gotta give a shout out to Animals. It's probably I think my top 3 favorite albums of all time. But
it's absolutely phenomenal. And again, if you are here and have not heard much of Pink Floyd, that is something you should get around
great
to.
Place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next, after that, we have Black Sabbath.
Oh God! And another one of my top 3 albums of all time, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath.
I as well.
You can take any album from the first one to Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Some people say Sabotage. I think Sabotage has some great stuff on it, but I think it's got some lackluster stuff on it, and the albums after that. But everything up to that, there's like not even one lackluster song. They're like the Beatles of metal. They just, song after song, album after album for those first 5 albums are near perfect. And so, and I would say Paranoid, there's definitely a very strong argument that could be made that is the quintessential heavy metal album.
I mean, at least when you're talking 70s metal,
I mean, it's
you
like
can't go wrong.
There wouldn't be Metallica, there wouldn't be, Pantera,
Queens
all these
of the
bands.
Stone Age,
I mean, Black Sabbath, they weren't just metal. They didn't just influence metal. They influenced a lot of rock, like you said, Soundgarden, Queens of the Stone Age. They're Sabbath.
And even if you're not a big fan of metal, they've got a lot of stuff that I think can be appreciated despite that.
That really quick, the thing about Sabbath is that they say is, if there wasn't blues and jazz, there wouldn't be Black Sabbath. So a lot of metal bands these days are influenced by metal bands, but the quintessential, arguably, metal band, Black Sabbath, reached outside of their genre to create, and they threw these ingredients into this boiling cauldron of molten lava that we call Sabbath.
All right, the next band that we have is Rush. Perhaps many of you are not aware of the beauty of Rush, but fear not, we shall give it to you in a bite-sized package. So at the beginning of their career, they were almost mini Led Zeppelin, as they were described by many other sources, but towards the end of their first couple of albums, and from then on forward, they became one of the, if not the quintessential progressive rock band, which perhaps progressive rock gets a bad rap for plenty of very justifiable reasons, but it's not for Rush. Rush is an incredibly honest band. They have never sold themselves short, and not even mentioning the musicianship, they are an incredibly influencing band to...
They're all 3 best friends too, and they all share the work equally. They have a symbiotic relationship that just, each guy is an integral part to the band. They to us are the #1 example of how you run a band. A real
been together
band.
over 40 years and just now kind of stopped touring, but that's only due to really health concerns, so I mean, you could say that they've really been around. Anyways,
their lyrics are so profound too. I mean, that's
something we recommend checking out by Rush would definitely be their first 8 or so albums. That's the time where they had a producer named Terry Brown, and that is their most popular period, and that's their best period.
Age. A lot of people like the later stuff, the 80s keyboard Rush stuff. We're not so much into that stuff, but we still always respect them, always give it a listen, and but those first 8 or so albums are brilliant, just timeless to us. So Rush.
Next on the list, we have Twilight Zone, a TV series. Of course, influences, as we are describing with some of these bands, can come from the most unlikely of sources. They don't necessarily have to come from, say, the same genre, or even really the same sort of district of art. We're influenced by this TV show of the 60s immensely. The philosophies and the stories that it tells are one of a kind, and they're absolutely vital, and they're so inspiring. They make you just want to write a story. You know, it's like when you
Writer Rod Serling is definitely one of my biggest influences. Not that my writing is like his, he's just so brilliant. I wouldn't even ever conceive of that, but the way that he thinks, it's so concise, and they're modern day futuristic fairy tales with, you know, like Aesop's fables, with a just a kicker of a moral lesson. Check out Twilight Zone.
episodes you may want to check out.
Oh God, Time Enough at Last is great. The Obsolete Man, Jess Bell is great. God, we could just go on and on. The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street.
The next band we have is the Beatles. So, the Beatles are, well, the influence of the Beatles is immeasurable.
Mm-hmm.
They've got plenty of great songs, a very diverse career that only spanned about 10 years, but that was more than enough time.
Most influential band in rock probably ever. I mean, it's not probably, they are. They're the most influential band. Yeah.
We recommend checking out all their stuff, really.
Yeah, you
Their
gotta,
later stuff is more on the side of Pink Floyd, and their earlier stuff is kind of more along the lines of like the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin, you know, early Led Zeppelin. So it's,
they had their pop era,
and then they had their kind
and then
of
they had their
hippie era, you know?
yeah. And but they were always hard workers. I mean, that was the thing about the Beatles. They had a lot of the image thing going for them, but they were hard. They're the hardest working band. George Harrison once said, you know, the Beatles we gave our nervous systems. You know, they never had a moment's peace. They were always working, and they were always in the spotlight. And when they broke up, it was reported that they were all quite relieved about it, because it was such a, you know, living in a fishbowl, so to speak. So
People, you know, think that being famous would be great, but it really only takes a little bit of thought to understand that not so much at such drastic levels. Like, you know, you think about what somebody in like a big position of power lives like, and it's probably not at all how one would wish to live. So,
yeah.
hats off to the Beatles.
They sacrificed their own personal lives to give us some of the best music the world will ever know.
Collaterally or however else. All right, the next band we have here is Radiohead, which I accidentally skipped over. But I did want to save it for a little bit later, because we recently saw Radiohead live, and it was quite the moving experience. Lots of people there weren't totally in tune, perhaps, with the show, but I do feel that, not minding any of those people, Radiohead is still one of the greatest bands of our, you know, century, I suppose. They're like the modern day Pink Floyd, if there could ever be such a thing. Their career has changed drastically from album to album, and much like Rush and all the bands that we admire, they never sold anything short, and they always were completely truthful and honest about what they wanted their art to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of bands that their fans want them to repeat what they do from album to album, and then there's
I
bands.
know plenty of people would want another OK Computer, but
Yeah.
Radiohead does not.
Radiohead is allowed to say, here's what we're doing now, because they are such an innovative band. They've pushed rock music about as far as it's gone, you know, and without being just unlistenable. And, you know, some with varying degrees of success, but when they hit it, as we've explained in our episode, which would probably be the thing to do, is go watch our episode of Geeking Out on Radiohead.
But hey, you know,
Brilliant. They're
great band. We recommend checking
So
out the
vital.
albums Amnesiac and In Rainbows, specifically In Rainbows. at least from my end, I believe that that's their
Yeah.
masterpiece album, even if many may not. OK Computer is also their most popular album. That's definitely a must listen as well. So back to where we left off, we have Yes.
Yes.
We're gonna have to start making this a little bit quicker, being that we just kind of hit the 16-minute mark, but that's no problem. Yes is an amazing band. The reasons for this are each of their members are absolutely vital. All of their members are world-class musicians, and whether it was by accident or on purpose, I don't really know, but it doesn't really matter to me.
It's interesting. They've switched up members quite a bit, probably more than any
I believe
other
they've
band.
had about 50 different members, but
Yeah.
their original lineup in the period of about Fragile, the Yes album, and Close to the Edge it's great.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful. There's nothing more to be said other than check out the album Fragile. It'll change your life. It's great. The next band that we have is almost a polar opposite, you could say, being Kiss. Now,
We got a lot of flack on our Kiss episode.
say what you will about Kiss, but as Rush would also say, no one puts on a show like Kiss. And that
we
in
we
itself,
need to really stress that we are talking about what to us is the only worthwhile Kiss, and that is their original period, 1973 to 1978. That 5 years enabled them to do a career
pretty
all
much
these
all
years
the
on.
good Kiss songs that you've heard are from there, and if
And
you,
that was the stuff that influenced Soundgarden, Smashing Pumpkins. I mean, you
every
name a
90s band
every 90s band was
influenced by Kiss.
Yeah, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, they all loved Kiss. They were all hugely influenced by Kiss. I was a kid back when Kiss was really making and I'm here to tell you, it's difficult to understand if you weren't there, but there was nothing cooler, not even remotely as cool as Kiss back in those days. Zach was kind of brought up on the old Kiss videos, and the thing that really infected us as a band is the energy that they brought to their stage show. They sweated it all out on the stage. Every night they left it all on the stage. And that energy
How many bands can do that?
Yeah.
It's not as easy as it may look.
That's
you know?
it's like they didn't make it was a meat and potatoes. It's time to rock. Detroit Rock City says it all. 9 o'clock, I gotta rock. Or 12 o'clock. Yeah, they rock a little later. Yeah. It's
We're
just cool.
family-friendly rock, and we rock at about 9.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. One of our favorite bands of all time. Although, when we're talking about all these bands, how are we able to say that? Led Zeppelin. The Led Zeppelin. Not really, but... So, Led Zeppelin is, well, from the beginning of their career to the very end, they had absolutely amazing, quintessential rock albums. And each of their members were the best of the 70s, so to speak, of their genre. You could ask many people and they would say, yeah, I firmly believe that John Bonham is the best drummer of 70s rock and roll. Or, yeah, I firmly believe that Jimmy Page is the best guitarist, or Robert Plant was the best vocalist ever, or their bass player was cool, I guess. But, no, I'm kidding. I think John Paul Jones is, like,
The best.
the best.
But the thing that even transcended that
thank him.
was Zeppelin's songs.
Yes.
Their songs were their strength. Just brilliant. I mean...
All written beautifully, from The Immigrant Song to Over the Hills and Far Away. There is...
The Rain song to I'm Gonna Crawl to... I mean, like, the range...
You can't go wrong
that they
with
had.
Led Zeppelin.
They were a heavy metal band. They were a rock band. They were an acoustic folk band. They were a blues band. They even dabbled in a little country. They dabbled in a little bit of mystic kind of keyboard trippy stuff. Led Zeppelin.
All right, next on our list we have, oh boy, the Mars Volta.
This band deserves much more recognition. It's the best show I've ever seen a band perform. 2005. Zach was only 1, so he
Kind of
couldn't
missed
come.
out on that one, but you
His
know,
mom wouldn't let me bring him.
win some, you lose some, I guess.
But the Mars Volta, they in their time, and there's talk of that they're going to reunite, and hopefully we'll get to rectify that. But they were a different band live than they were in the studio.
Their studio stuff was much like Pink Floyd's, where it was kind of impossible to replicate live. You know, they had so many tracks going on at one time that it would have taken a quintet of octopi to get any of their sound out. But instead of trying to botch that, they decided to put on a totally different atmosphere for their live shows, which is just
Pure energy, pure, like, where are these guys getting this energy? And they did it night after night.
I
Yeah.
can safely say this is my favorite band from however long ago to now. It's been questioned, but I love this band more
Yeah.
than a man should love a band.
Yeah.
Next, we have a TV show, Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad is great. Many people have seen it. If you have not seen it, perhaps it's time to see that.
Yeah. Give it a chance. You'll get hooked, and
It's a lot deeper than it may appear. It's not all just
some really good lessons, really good moral quandaries and lessons in this show. The spin-off Better Call Saul is pretty darn good too. A lot of people,
even if you haven't seen Breaking Bad, that's its own thing.
yeah, a lot of
that's-
people can't decide which one they like better. Some people like Better Call Saul better. We really like Better Call Saul. The new season just started. It's in its 4th season.
We haven't
Breaking
seen that
Bad,
yet,
what was 5 seasons?
But by the time this is up, we will probably have seen that.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad, can't really remember. I really just think about it. It's the story had a beginning
Yeah.
and an ending, and
great.
it fell where it fell.
If you've seen it, you know what we mean.
All right, so the next thing that we have on our list is the 70s smooth yacht rock.
It's a key part of our whole thing that is not immediately detectable, but that smooth. It's been coined yacht rock. There is an actual yacht rock series
You think you can
on
just
YouTube.
tell some nostalgic tale and make everybody think that yacht rock is great without them hearing it? That's what a fool believes. That's what a fool believes.
Makes
So
me
there's-
want to go sailing. Sailing takes me away.
All right, but anyways, yacht rock is very drastically different from our styles of music, and no, I'll save that for later. But it's still so impactful to us because we always believe in a balanced musical diet and drawing influence from wherever you can. Because if you're a rock musician and all you draw your influence from is rock bands, you're gonna sound a little bit sterile. I mean, it's
I've always called
bound
that
to happen.
period the golden age of top 40.
Yeah.
It's the one period that top 40 that I can listen to it. And it's the songs were just cool. You know, maybe they're a little hokey to some people now, but there was great writing, great musicianship, great production, and a lot of these studio musicians played on songs of song, you know, a lot like in Motown. But there was something about that period in the 70s where the music, it just was a lot more uncompromising and accessible at the same
And
time.
mixing these influences with our music, it kind of gives it a down-to-earth sort of beneficial to the consumer feel, which doesn't exactly mean commercial, mind you, but it means that
One who consumes music.
one who consumes music would enjoy this perhaps a little bit more, because we have drawn from the ancestors that have pioneered the smoothest and most beautiful music of all, perhaps. I don't know. Moving on, we have Stone Temple Pilots. Stone Temple Pilots is probably the closest thing to Led Zeppelin that the 90s ever received, which is an accomplishment in itself. But they were just more than a grunge band or a Led Zeppelin copy.
When they
were
came
much,
out, they
much
were
more.
very much criticized for being a copycat of the Seattle bands, and they did have a little bit of those influences. But
But
when they
whatever.
their
Whatever.
second album
This-
came out, and it was like, whoa,
this
these
is the important
guys are
stuff.
their own thing. You know, they really, and they just continued to be more and more their own thing. And
We recommend checking out from this band the albums Purple, Tiny Music, and
Shangri-La Dot has got some really good.
even their first
Great
album.
stuff,
Their first album's a more grunge style
Yeah.
album. Their
If
next
you love
album's
the
a more
hard rock
alternative.
edge, their first album is very impressively different from their other albums. But all through their whole career, it was one of the things that stunned me the most. I've seen this band a number of times, and the thing that always stunned me the most was song after song. I mean, they would play, their songs are short, and they would play for 2 hours, and you knew just about every song because every one was a radio song. So,
Anyways, next band that we have is Perfect Circle. Perfect Circle hasn't released too much. They just came out with a new album, but well, we're still kind of getting into the new album, so we're going to talk about mostly their older stuff that we're a bit more familiar with and that we connect with a little bit more. So I believe it's their first 2 albums, The 13th Step and Mer de Noms.
yeah.
The name escapes me. Those 2 albums are absolutely great. A Perfect Circle is a band that is very different from Tool, but
The
has the
singer
same
of Tool
front
sings
man.
for both bands.
So if you like Tool, I would recommend checking them out because
They're like a more concise,
kind of
mellower,
yeah.
alternative, you know.
Recommend those
thing.
first 2 albums, and actually their new one. Really, I mean,
The
from
new
what I've
one
heard,
has some really good songs
Yeah.
on it that kind of speak to modern society with technology and social media and
as
such.
all the hip kids say, we live in a society.
Yeah.
So, anyways, next we have Rocky, which how does that fit? That's not very musical. It's not even really philosophical, although it is. Hear us out. Rocky is a story about a young Sylvester Stallone, otherwise known as Rocky in the movies, hence the title, who is kind of down and out. All these movies, there's like, 7 of them, they all start really similar. Main character's down and out. And he gets this opportunity, and the opportunity is you put in the work, and you'll get far, and you'll get
Preparation meets opportunity.
that
And Rocky won the
success.
fights that he won with heart. You know, the thing about Rocky that's the central idea of his character is he's got so much heart. And he's beaten up by life, but he doesn't let it turn him into a cynical guy. He kind of flirts with that idea a bit, and those are the dramatic tension throughout the movies. But Rocky, anytime you want to get pumped, watch Rocky. You will get pumped.
All right, next we have King Crimson, but not just any King Crimson. In the court of the Crimson King.
This is controversial. Like every King Crimson fan, there's different camps because King Crimson had different lineups.
That's
And,
true. Now, I can't say that I've heard much of the later King Crimson. I can't even say I've heard much of any King Crimson besides this first album, but I don't care. It doesn't matter. This first album by King Crimson is the best album that has ever been written by human beings.
It's in my top 3.
It's great. I mean, it's vital that you listen to this album. Now, it's kind of difficult though. It's not really on the internet anywhere. They got the stuff on lockdown. They know. It's great. But, you know, if you can get your hands on some of these songs, really anything by King Crimson, I was kind of joking about that. This band's great. They're
Highly
beginning period,
influential.
yeah, I mean,
they're difficult.
progressive rock.
Yeah, they're
But
and some of the stuff's hit or miss, but when they hit, it's unlike any other
it's
music
a very
the
good
planet
combination
has ever known.
of jazz and rock.
Yeah, there's
done
definitely
perfectly.
a fusion kind of thing, but the songs, they just play differently than anybody else, and they have their own thing. So,
If-
you know, you take a band like Primus, okay? I'm just going to go on a quick tangent here. There isn't another band like Primus. What does Primus sound like? They sound like Primus. That's King Crimson. King Crimson is just like, you hear them, and oh, that's King Crimson. So, check
Nothing
out
really
in,
like
the,
Primus,
in the Court of the Crimson King.
You must listen to this album. If you do nothing else, please, I beg of you, listen to this album. All right, so next we have The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. So
Oh,
this
yes.
is a short story / book.
It's a classic from the 1920s. It's still popular today because the wisdom in that book is some of the best wisdom known to man.
Like, think about everything cool and philosophical and great that you live your life with. Perhaps it's walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. Perhaps it's seek first to understand, then to be understood. Maybe it's don't be a mean individual. Whatever it may be, it's all contained within this book, and it's written so poetically, and
it's profoundly striking, because
It hits
you're
home.
going to say, wow, I have, you know, a lot of wisdom is just affirming what you already know, but the prophet is full of things that are like, woo, yeah,
Like,
I
this
never
is
really
stuff maybe
thought
you
of it
didn't
like
know.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.